Today I'm going to teach you how to play Scythe. This is the end result of a 4-player game of Scythe. This is what the beginning of a game of Scythe looks like. Again, this may look complex, and there are a lot of components, but this is very easy in a way that not hard to understand. Everything you need to know is going to be on the cards on the board, and the rule book will clarify if you have any questions. But I'm going to try to make sure you understand all those to start here. But the rule book's there for you if you need it. Every player gets these 2 cards too that are double-sided that have kind of simplified information regarding the game. Well, I shouldn't say every player. There's enough for 4 players. This is a 4-player game setup, but you can actually play 7 players with Scythe. The core game comes with 5, and then there's an expansion to get the other 2. So for the setup, everyone gets a factory card template and a faction template. Now, I do believe the rules say that you're supposed to just randomly hand these out and not let people pick, which I think is a good idea because, once you see which works well together, because they both do different things, and then when they combo off of each other, people that have played the game a few times will figure that out. So you randomly give people the cards so they kind of just get what they get. But the way we actually did it last night, because I have played this before and everyone else hasn't, is I let them pick what faction they wanted to be. But then I just randomly dealt out the factory cards because basically it was seating placement. And then preferential colors and such. So just to clarify, the factory card literally looks like a factory. The backdrop of the card looks like a factory. And the faction cards literally have a picture of the mini that you're using. So this is the Saxony Empire, Gunter, Noct and Tag. That looks very similar to this mini. It's the wolf and a spike hat guy. That's the picture on the card. And of course, you'll see the corroborating faction logo on the board. You can see the 7 faction logos. So to start the game, once you've been dealt your factory and your faction card, you take the mini for that faction. This is referred to as the character piece, and place it on your faction's home spot. And then there are also these little wooden, we call them meeples. Every faction is going to have 8 of those. 2 of them start on the board in the 2 horizontal spaces, or 2 connecting spaces, whatever, to that faction's home space. Now, this faction has 3 connecting, but you can't start a piece in a water space. You really can't use water spaces too much. I think there's one faction that has that ability later, but so this one would start on these 2. So if you have any that have 3, one of them is going to be water. You can't have those. So yellow, whatever faction this is, would start with their pieces here, so on and so forth. You can see I've already done that. So everybody starts with their main character mini on their home and 2 of their meeples, 1 on each of the 2 corresponding connecting spaces at home. Then you need to also take, these are encounter tokens, same on both sides, and you will see pictures of the encounter tokens on the board. You take the encounter tokens and cover them up for everywhere there's on the board. There's 11. There's actually 12 of these tokens in the board or in the game. I think they just gave you an extra in case you lose one. But you start with all of the encounters with an encounter token on them. And then on each card, it's going to tell you starting conditions. So these are going to be the same example for every faction, but what it actually is may be different, will be different on, I think it's all of them, but if there's any that's the same, don't hold it against me. So on the faction, it's going to show this little emblem with a number. That is your power number that you start the game with. This is the power track. These are supposed to be the same symbol as this, but it is squished, I guess, to make it thinner to fit on the board. So the black faction starts with 1 power. So it comes with a little power mini. You just put that in the 1 and the power track. The black faction also starts with 4 combat cards. I'll explain what combat cards do later. But on the board, in the top right-hand corner, is the combat cards deck. And then below it, you'll see another spot that you discard used combat cards in. But you start with 4. So I've got my 4 here for my faction to start. Then on the factory card, same place on the card, it's going to show you this little bird logo with a number 2, which that is objective cards. So if you look on the board, these are the objective cards. So the black faction starts with 2 objective cards. I've got 2 right here already. Then this heart, this is your popularity. So the black faction will start with 2 popularity. If you look on the left-hand upper half of the board, this is the popularity track. Goes from 0 to 16. And the black faction starts on 2. You also have a little wooden heart. So the black starts on 2. And then lastly, what you start with, this is gold coins. So I start with 5 gold coins. Now, there's everything up to and including 50. So there's 1, 3, 5, 10, 20, and 50 coins. The ones with the hole in the middle with no number, oh, it actually has a number there. It says 1 on it. So the one in the hole in the middle is 1, and everything else 3, 5. You can see on one side they're all numbered. So 50. But anyway, I start with 5. So you can kind of choose what you want. I choose 5 ones. And I could take a 5 token if I wanted. Neither here nor there though. But these 2 things on the faction card and on the factory card are your starting situations with all of those miscellaneous things. Now, aside from that, the last thing you need to do for setup is there are a stack of factory cards, a deck of factory cards, I should say, in the game. You need to get however many players there are plus 1 amount of factory cards out of the factory deck. Just shuffle it. And again, we were using a 4-player game. Plus 1, 5. So in the factory deck in the game, we just shuffled it up. And then we dealt out 5 factory cards and put them in this spot here on the board. You can see the picture of the factory here, incidentally, on the board. The factory is in the middle. See the corresponding symbol in the middle to the factory cards. Okay, so you place how many players there are plus 1 factory cards in that spot. And then there's a common objective card space here. These are kind of hard tiles. I think there's 6 of them. You need to shuffle those 6 up and just randomly pick 1 to place here as well. I'll explain what that does later. And then that's everything that goes on the board. As far as your cards are concerned now, everybody's going to have 6 corresponding colored stars for whatever tokens they chose. Whatever faction they chose. And then just put those 6 stars on your faction card. Now, a lot of people don't really care about where you kind of keep your stuff. As you can see already, the space is limited on my table. This is kind of a bigger table. But I'm actually using a big board too. The core set of Scythe only comes with the board. You can see there's a break right here in this direction. That's all it comes with. Except on the other side of this board, this entire board is on there. So on one side, it's 2/3 of the larger board, and on the other side, it's the complete board. I opted to, I think it was like $15 to buy the expansion board, which, again, when you use the back half of the board that comes with the core games and then add the expansion, it gives you the entire board. So my board is the largest possible board they have in the game. But if you just bought the core, it would be a little bit smaller. But regardless, my point is, space is going to be limited on the board, especially depending on how many players you have, of course. You can still play 7 players on the other side of the small board. So you're still going to have a lot of people. So in my opinion, people should be pretty adamant about keeping their stuff on their faction card. Rather than having stars over here, especially when I tell you where stars go, this guy over here is near where they go. So if he doesn't have those on his board, people can get confused about where was that, that kind of thing. And gold too, if I have someone sitting beside me here and it's not on my faction, is that your gold, is that my gold, that kind of thing. So I think you should keep your stars and your gold on your faction card. Then the only other thing that goes on your faction card is your mechs. Everybody's going to have 4 mechs that comes with their faction. You'll see there are 4 exactly mechs base sized circles here. You need to cover up those circles with your mechs. And then that's your faction card setup. Now this looks complicated, but it's fairly simple. It's kind of like that old game when you were a kid where you kind of find the right shape to put into a bucket. Blocks of shapes to put into a bucket with the right shape. Anyway, that's what I think about when I do this anyway. But you're going to have just circle wooden pieces. And you're going to have, there are little divots in the card. I don't know if you can really tell in the video, but there's little divots in the card. Obviously, if you have the card, you'll be able to feel them. But these, you'll have 4 of these. They go in the bottom of the card. You'll have 6 more meeples, like the 2 you already placed. And those 6 are lined up. And you'll see a big open divot or rectangle in there. And then you'll have 6 just little square cubes. If you look on, there's going to be divots on the top third of your card everywhere a cube goes. So it's pretty easy to figure out. But you can also see in that divot, there's a little black cube in the bottom corner of the divot to also distinguish that that's where the little cubes go. But you're going to have 6 of those. Again, the amount of all of these are the same for every player. Then the last thing you have is you actually have 4 buildings. There's going to be a little windmill. And it's a square base, and there's a picture of a windmill. So you put it in the square. Then you're going to have a larger, similar to, but this is actually a circle. But this is just a octagon, I guess. Yeah. So you see the octagonal divot in here? That goes in there. That is your armory. And then it looks like a building, but it's actually a monument, and it's a rectangular base. So you put that in there. And then this divot with the tunnel is also a rectangle, so I guess you could mistakenly assume that the monument's supposed to go in there. But you actually see it's it's like a tunnel entrance, and you'll see the tunnel entrance, a picture of that there too. So you put that there. And that's how you set up your faction card. Your factory card. So you use these that's on your factory and your faction to decide what you get to start the game with and where you put your pieces on the board. You place your faction and the weeples or meeples, whatever, on the board, placing counter tokens. How many players there are plus one factory. Then place all the other cards in the places, and everything, like I said, everything you need to know with this game is going to be on the boards are the cards. It's really simple once you know, of course. Basically, you hear it once, you'll know. You just have to hear it once. When you look at it without hearing anything, it looks a little confusing. Then you're ready to go. There's also these two dials. Those are for combat. I'll explain that later. We just put those off to the side. And then there's resources that you also put off to the side. These yellow ones look like kind of honey pots. That's how they kind of look on the board as well. But these are food. Bluish gray ones are oil. Silver gray are iron. And the brown ones are wood. So you keep those separate off to the side. Incidentally, the game comes with these extra pieces. Says different plus amounts on both sides in case you run low on these, because if you play like a 7-player game, you might. If you have one, but you put that one on here, basically that's worth 4. So they have these tokens kind of pre-packaged in here to help you with that if you run out of it. It hasn't happened with me that yet, and I've played a 3 and a 4-player game. So those go off to the side. Then I already showed you. You got your bins of coins. Don't really need to worry about, in my opinion, separating them in any significant way. They just kind of be off to the side. I usually have them off to one side so these players can help people with the money, and then the resources to the other side so these players can help people with the resources. And I think that is a complete setup to get going. That took me about 18 minutes to film. So in my opinion, if just one player deals the factory and the faction cards to the players, once everybody has their own, everybody works on their own setup and helps with the miscellaneous places on the board, you could easily have this game set up in 5 minutes if everybody's diligent. You got 4 players, whatever, maybe 10 if you got a little bit less diligent people or unsure about how this works, and less players, of course. But like I said, you should be able to have this set up in 5-10 minutes. This stores very easily in the box as well. So the way you win this game, very simply put, is to end the game with the most gold. It's that simple. Now, the game ends. I'm going to flip this over here for you so you can see this chart, even though it's upside down for me. When you accomplish any 6, when one player accomplishes any 6 of these 10 objectives. Now, the way you signify that you have accomplished it, no coincidence that like I said at the beginning of the game, everybody starts with 6 wooden stars of their color. Anytime you accomplish one of these objectives, you put a star there. And whoever places all 6 of their stars first or whoever places all 6 of their stars on the objective track first ends the game. They don't win the game, but just once that's done, the game is over. Then you need to count up everybody's gold, and whoever has the most gold wins. I'll explain that in a minute. These objectives are fairly simple. I'll just tell you what they are, and then when I talk about the actual turns, you'll understand more. But if you achieve 16 power, you put a star here. If you achieve 18 popularity, you put a star here. If you win a battle against another player, put a star here. You can actually do that twice. So if you win a second battle against another player, you put a star there. If you accomplish one of your objectives, you put a star there. If you put all 8 of your meeple, your little wooden meeple, on the board, put a star there. If you accomplish 4 enlistments, I'll show you what that is. You'll understand better. But if you accomplish all 4, put a star there. If you build all 4 of your buildings, put a star there. If you build all 4 of your mechs and they're on the board, put a star there. And if you accomplish your 6 upgrades, you put a star there. So like I said, as soon as one player has placed all 6 of their stars, the game ends. They don't win, the game just ends. Well, the last thing I forgot to mention was set up is this little player piece that just goes, I put it to the side of your factory with where you have your combat cards and your objective cards. Note, this factory started with 2 objective cards. So I've got 2. I can still only accomplish 1 to put a star on the objective track up there. You see the bird with the envelope? I can put 1 star there. You can only accomplish 1 objective, even though you may have more, or everybody does get more than 1 objective to start the game. And these are just your private things. You keep these separate. But it's going to tell you, if you do this, you accomplish this objective. So you got options for that. You keep them secret. People don't know what you're doing, so they can't follow your plans. But anyway, so you got your player piece. Start the game at this side of the board as well. Now on your turn, you're going to be able to do multiple things, but you've got 1 action per turn. And what that action is to take your player piece and place it in one of your 4 factory zones. Okay? So boom. That's my action for my turn. Now once you've played your player piece, you get to do what that zone says you can do. You do what it says in the top row first, and then once you're done with that, then you can do what it says in the bottom next. I'll explain what those are individually, but just to let you know 2 other things. Every subsequent turn past the first turn, you're only going to have 3 options for you because you have to move from the zone you're currently in. Now, anytime I mention any of these rules, these are general rules. There is a faction that has the ability, they don't have to move. They can just stay in the same zone and do that again if they want. But I think there's only one faction like that. I should cover that now since I'm mentioning it. But each faction on their card in the top right-hand corner here are going to have a special ability. So the Saxony Empire's special ability is to dominate, and there's no limit of the number of stars I can place from completing objectives or winning combat. Because the basic rule for the game is I can only win 2 combat, and like I've already said, you can only accomplish 1 objective. But the Saxony Empire has no limit on winning combat and placing stars or objectives. So as a Saxony Empire, you could accomplish both your objectives you've been given, And there's ways to get objective cars later. You could do another one, no limit. And then, of course, combat. Everyone can only naturally do 2, but you can attack people to try to end the game. You win 6 combats. You can have all 6 of them right here in these 2 spots, and that would end the game. So every faction is going to have their own special ability. Like I said, that's another reason why you just want to kind of deal the factions rather than let people choose, and the factories, because people will figure out what's going to work best together. So anyway, in general, though, getting back to this, once you're past the first turn that gives you a 4 as an option, you're only going to have 3 as an option. You have to move. Your one action per turn is to move your player piece to a new zone, and you have to do it. Okay. Now, once you're at the zones in the factory, everybody's going to have, every character is, or, faction is going to have the same options. But what's going to be different is, I know you don't understand what these are yet, but just to give an example of what I'm talking about, this top in this zone is called produce, and this bottom is upgrade. This top is trade. This bottom is deploy. Another factory card, incidentally, the names of the factory cards are right here. This is the engineering factory card. There's an industrial factory card and an agricultural factory card. But anyway, the only difference is going to be is where everything's placed. So this says, like I said, produce is on top of upgrade and trade is on top of deploy. Another card might have produce on top of deploy with trade on top of upgrade. And any combination of this. This is a bolster on top of build and move gain on top of enlist. Another one might have produce on top of the enlist part, so I'm repeating myself, but you get my point. So everybody's going to have these same options. They just might be laid out a little differently. So to start, you can see at the top, and again, you always have to start at the top and then go to the bottom. You can't do your bottom first. Well, they're both optional. So if you move here and you don't want to do the top, that's fine. You can do the bottom. But once you've done the bottom, you can't go back and do the top. It has to be done top and then bottom. You'll notice at the top of all the tops, there is a pay. Pay for 3 of them. And then 1 is move gain. So you don't have to pay anything to move. This pay currently has nothing because the meeples are still all on the board. This is just 1 gold, and this is 1 gold coin. So for my first turn, if I move to what this zone is called for me, is the produce upgrade zone. Now, you always should call out what you're doing so the people across the board don't have to scrutinize and look over here on what you're doing, because people are going to be aware of what you're doing, and they can check and look at what you're doing all the time to kind of checks and balances thing. I don't, when I talk about this kind of thing, I don't consider it an integrity issue. It's just everyone makes mistakes and there's a lot going on in this game. So everybody can kind of pay attention to everybody. So when I put my piece here, I just say I'm going to produce. Okay, I'm going to explain what produce means, but once everybody will know what produce is because they'll have it on their card and they'll do it. So if you say you're going to produce, they know what you can do. Okay, so if I'm going to produce, I don't have to pay anything at all to start to produce. And then on the card, like I said, it describes everything you do. You can produce, and there's these 2 pictures of little, I think these are hexagons, right? Yeah, whatever. Board spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so hexagons, right? Yeah, hexagons. If I'm saying that wrong, don't focus on that. But you're going to see the 2 shapes of the board spaces here. So for me to produce, I get to produce 2 resources and place that I have meeple on. And when you produce a resource, you place it where the meeple is. So like I said, you start the game with 2 meeple on the board. I can produce oil because this meeple is here, and I can produce iron because this meeple is here. Now, I cannot, each meeple can only produce one resource. So I cannot produce 2 oil. I cannot produce 2 iron. So I produce 2 of what my meeples are currently on. So when I produce here for the first turn, I'm going to produce an oil. And you literally put that on the board with the meeple. And I'm going to produce an iron. You literally put that on the board there too. So that's all you do for the top section there. And then the bottom is I can pay 1, 2, 3 oil. You can see the little diagrams of the oil drums to upgrade. And I can upgrade 1 and get 2 gold. But I don't have 3 oil yet. I got 1 oil and 1 iron. So I can't even do the bottom half yet. So we'll worry about that later. But that's what you do in the produce. Say I moved to the second space, which is trade. I can pay 1 gold to trade with meeples. 2. I get 2. And you can see it's different colors. That means if I can get 2 of any resources. Now the way this works is I get the 2 resources I want. Let's say I want to do this. I want to upgrade next time, so I need 3 oil to do that. I've already got 1 oil. So say on my second turn I move to trade. So I'm going to be like, you know what? I want 2 oil. So I get 2 oil. And then you can place these on the board with either of your meeple. So I can put them all together here. I can split them up. I can put them all over there. Whatever, but that's what the first half of trade is. I pay 1 gold to trade with where a meeple is and get 2 resources. Okay? And then there's a slash. Replace the slash with the word or. I just wish it had the word or there instead of the slash because people debate about this all the time. Well, I shouldn't say people, new people that are playing do. Anyway, there's a heart. So I can either do what I just did, which is get 2 resources, or gain a heart on the popularity track. So I'm black, I'm on the 2. If I chose to get the heart for the trade action instead of the 2 resources, I'd move that heart to 3. That's simple. So again, put my player piece there, say trade, and then choose to either get 2 resources or gain a heart. So that's trade. The next one you can do is bolster. Again, you move your player piece here, pay 1 gold, and bolster 2, which means to move your power piece up the power track 2. That's simple, so I'd go from 1 to 3. Or, because there's a slash, get a combat card. So you literally just grab a combat card from the deck. That's bolstering. Lastly is moving slash, which means or gaining. You don't have to pay anything for this section. And you can move 2 meeple 1 space. Simple enough. Obviously, it has to be a space that's attached, and it can't have a space that has a river in between. Workers cannot go onto the water spaces or cross rivers. There's going to be ways to accomplish that later, so you don't have to worry about it for right now. But you'll see in 5 of the 7 factions, they're surrounded by water. So you're going to need the ability to get over there later anyway. There's also going to be another way to to do that, and I'll explain that later as well. But anyway, just focus on what your move accomplishes now. Move your player piece to the move. Tell the other players, I'm going to move gain and move 2 of your figures 1 space. Now that includes your character piece as well. He starts in the hole. He, she, there's girls as well. So he, she starts and the home space. So it's literally 1 just to get out of here. I'll explain what he does later, but I can move 2 pieces, 1 space. So I can choose any of the 3, or I can choose 2 of the 3, but move each only 1 space. And that's the move gain. Easy. So like I said, don't forget, whenever you put your player piece into the area you're going to choose, announce to the other players what you're doing. I'm going to produce, I'm going to trade, I'm going to bolster, or I'm going to move gain. Because the other thing you can do here, obviously, with the slash is an or. Move or gain. So you can just say move or gain if you want. There's 2 options here. You just get a gold. So you move here, just get 1 gold piece. Put it on your faction map. Those are the top 4. Now, the second thing to do on the same turn wherever you put it. So again, I'll go here and announce I'm going to produce. Oh, incidentally, something I forgot, I apologize. These are more workers. These little meeples are called the workers. So there's 3 types of player pieces. There's mechs, characters, and workers. Okay? So you got 6 more workers here. So this is a worker producer. This is called the village. This is called mountains. Forget what this one's called. These are called farms with a little honeypot on here. And as you can imagine, these are called woods or forest with the wood production. So you can only produce whatever you're on. So this is all I could produce when I was on there. But let's say it's my next turn, and on my last turn I moved one of my workers to this spot. Incidentally, the production doesn't move with the worker. It just stays there. Okay? If you're on the village and you want to produce a worker, all you do is take the worker off of here instead of, resources, and put it on the place. But that's the only place you can get workers, more workers, is from the village spot, which is designated by a meeple figure there on it. Now you'll notice as you put out more workers, now the produce has a cost. You must pay 1 power. Again, you can see it with the symbol. It says pay, and it's got that symbol. So you pay 1 power. So the only way you can produce at that point is if you have power to pay it. I'd go down 1 to pay to produce. And then you can see as you put out more workers, boom, it's going to cost you 1 heart. So now every time I go to produce, I want to produce 2 resources or put out another meeple, I got to pay a power and a popularity, which is a heart. So I'd have to take my heart down there as well. So if I can't pay, obviously with the rest it's gold, the other 2 it's gold, but it works for this too. If I can't pay what it costs to pay, I can't do it. So once you get all your workers out, anytime you want to produce, it's actually going to cost you a power, a popularity, and a coin. So when you get the workers out, they're going to help you. But then they also will cost you. So 2 other notes regarding workers is, like I said, once you start taking workers off, the payments are going to pop up. You cannot choose to take a worker back from the board and put it back on the factory card. Once they're on the board, they stay on the board. And then there's no amount of workers. There's no limit to how many workers you can have on one spot. There's no limit to how many resources can be on one spot, and all that. So now covering the bottom, like I said, you always have to do the top row first and then the bottom row. In this one, I can pay 3 oil to upgrade. Upgrading is simple. You take one of your 6 black square wooden cubes and move them from the top to the bottom. You can upgrade anything you want. So when you're here, you have to be here to upgrade. But then to upgrade, you can upgrade anything you want. And here's what you'll see why it's an upgrade. So let's say I want to upgrade my produce, my produce. zone. Take that square. And now I've upgraded. So when I produce, I actually get 3 resources and or meeples. You know, meeple being a resource, worker being a resource as well. But you get 3 instead of 2. So that's the way it upgrades. It also upgrades down here. Say I want to upgrade my upgrade section. So you take a cube from the top, put it to the bottom. And again, you don't have to choose this just because I'm here. But once I put a cube down here, you put it in the available slot that's at the bottom of any of the 4 sections. And now, to upgrade next time, it only costs me 2 oil. So an upgrade gives you a double upgrade bonus. This one here, if I choose this one, I can choose to either get 2 resources or 2 hearts. And when I upgrade the bottom here, sorry, I knocked my guy off. It's only going to cost me 3 iron instead of 4. If I put it here, it's only going to cost me 2 wood instead of 3. If I put it here, it's only going to cost me 2 food instead of 3. So you get a double upgrade with upgrades, so they're sweet. This one bolsters 3. This one, you get 2 combat cards instead of 1. This one, you get to move 3 figures 1 space, or get 2 gold instead of 1. So like I said, an upgrade is awesome. It makes it that you get more up here, and it costs less to get what you do down here. Okay? So moving to the next zone for what is in this card is the trade deploy zone. You know, I'd move here and I'd say, okay, I'm going to trade, and I'm going to be like, okay, now I'm going to deploy. Right now it costs 4 iron to deploy a mech. And it says with a meeple on it. So you take one of your 4 mechs and you put it on a spot where there's a worker. The simulation here is that the worker's actually building the mech on that territory. Now you can take any 4 of your mech, and the reason that's important because they all give you different abilities. This one gives you Riverwalk, this one gives you Underpass, this one gives you Disarm, and this one gives you Speed. Now what do all those mean? It's on the card. Like I said, there's a lot of complicated things here, but it's all explained. So if I choose to put this mech out, it gives me 1 hex per movement, so +1 per movement. So it, in essence, upgrades my movement here. So now instead of moving 2 pieces 1 space, I can move 2 pieces 2 spaces. So you get +1 per movement. So speed's pretty sweet. That, you know, obviously doubling your movability helps. Disarm has a combat benefit. Underpass has a movement benefit. And Riverwalk, this is what I was talking about. It lets you move your mechs, and a picture's attached here. It lets you move your mechs or your character piece across water. Now, for this Riverwalk, and they're all different, but his Riverwalk is to move across rivers, 2 forests, and mountains. So that means you can move to them. That doesn't mean you can move back from them. So for example here, now if I had the Riverwalk ability here, I could move a mech or a character piece, I have to have a mech on the board, to a forest or mountain. Again, forest is the wood, mountain is the iron. So I can now move my mech to the forest. And then if I'm at the forest, I can move my mech back to a mountain. But it can only move to a forest or a mountain.